The Spin-off Podcast Network.
What's up? It's me, Don Tolliver. If I could describe the open earbud, I would describe it as very seamless. It's like you clip it onto your ear, and then sometimes you can forget it's there, but it's not going anywhere because it's like clipped. It's kind of crazy. If I could bring my music with me wherever I go, it just make life easier and seamless without interruption. To be able to have the music on hand like that without any interruptions would be great. Check out Bose.com for more.
There's no better feeling than a personal win, and the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you do just that. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
When the Facts Change is brought to you by the Spin-off Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBank, the bank for Kiwi looking to get ahead in business and in life. A bank that delivers expertise in banking know-how, smart advice for business owners wanting to invest, grow their business or diversify. A bank that adapts with technology through the lens of its people and customers. It is a bank with heart that is driven by its purpose. Kiwi, making Kiwi better off. So how do you feel when you get paid? Is it a moment that you remember? Is it a moment of joy? Is it a moment when you think, wow, that's a fantastic boss I've got there paying me money? Or do you just not think about it at all? You assume it's going into the account and you're just vaguely happy that it shows up on your mobile phone when you check the account the day after it's supposed to be there. These are the issues that Extraordinary, a new company, thinks about a lot. How do employers get a real bang for their buck when they pay money to their employees? Or more importantly, give some sort of benefit to their employees. It might be a parking space, it might be a visit to the doctor, or it might be reimbursement for some sort of expense that you've got as an employee. These things aren't always easy to manage. The business of keeping your receipts and making sure you claim all your expenses is the bane of a lot of people's lives in business. And for a lot of employers, they're looking for ways to really connect with their employees, to get some joy into the process of paying people money. And for a lot of New Zealanders, they've gotten used to having almost all of their remuneration paid as cash, if you like, or at least an electronic payment direct into their bank account. That's because in New Zealand, the introduction of fringe benefits tax more than 40 years ago and the very extensive coverage of GST means it's quite difficult to actually get money from an employer that hasn't been touched by the IRD in some way, in which the assumption is that you are paying tax on it before or after you've used it. It's often meant that it's actually just simpler to give people the payment in cash, or at least in the account. But that doesn't really give you a big zhoosh of joy when that happens. This week on When the Facts Change, we speak to Steven Zinsli, the founder of Extraordinary, formerly called HealthNow, about a new payment card that employers can use to reimburse employees or to offer things that employees may not know they'd like, but will give them a little bit of joy. This week on When the Facts Change, we talk about payment systems, about the development of a fintech, and that moment when you get paid. Is it joyful? Is it something you remember? Or is it just routine? Well, kia ora, and welcome to the When the Facts Change studio to Steven Zinsli, who is the founder of Extraordinary, or formerly HealthNow. Great to see you, Steven.
Thanks, Bernard. It's so good to be here.
Tell us about that change to start with between HealthNow and Extraordinary.
Yeah, of course. So as many people may know that's listening, HealthNow had built a really cool bit of technology which allowed us to control payment cards which we were then utilizing to solve the massive problem of reimbursements within the delivery of health and wellbeing allowances. And so what's happened recently is that we had a number of our customers over the last 6 months, actually, that were just asking us about how they could use this controllable card technology for more than just health, clothing allowances, reward recognition, gifts, travel allowances, public transport, and many other things. And we started to come to the realization that the technology itself could lateralize to solve those problems. And then obviously you end up with this really big elephant in the room, right? Of like HealthNow doing all of this other things doesn't make sense. We were running into challenges when we were pitching that product, the lateralization of the product and how it could be used in other parts of the business. And then we ended up realizing, or kind of defining what we were actually solving for, which was we were the mechanism to handle all of a company's extraordinary payments that sit outside of payroll and wages. And that's when it came to us that we're extraordinary. We're about making extraordinary payments extraordinary, about showing how or helping organizations make their auxiliary benefits extraordinary, and actually helping from a behavioral economic perspective to try and elevate employee value proposition and the perception of how someone receives a benefit that their employer is delivering them.
Yeah, could you talk a bit more about these benefits? Because we're all used to getting a pay packet. We know what's in that. It goes straight into our bank account usually, and we might get given some cash for milk money or to buy some biscuits or something. But it sounds like this is something that's a bit bigger and wider than most people might understand. Can you talk a bit about how big and extensive this use of these extraordinary payments are?
Yeah, so I think most people, as you say, have got some form of benefits beyond their salary. Companies for a long time have been looking at ways to differentiate their employee value proposition, their employer brand, to attract, recruit, and retain staff, in addition to promoting more productive employees using reciprocity principle, reducing absenteeism, and so forth. Companies have already been doing lots of different things. I think from my perspective and looking at some of our customers, the way that people have been receiving these benefits hasn't been hitting the mark for a really long time. And I've started to tell the story around this idea of reimbursements, right? And we'll use a story now. So let's say you put your hand up for a giveaway that you saw online, and the giveaway was $500, and you liked it or commented or did whatever you need to do to get in the draw, and then you win. And then the person reaches out to you and says, "Hey man, you've won the competition. Great work. Go and spend $500 of your own money. Send me the receipts for the $500, and then I'll send you the money across in about a week to 2 weeks." All of a sudden, you've missed the gratification moment in that story, and it doesn't feel like you've won a giveaway, right? And that's how organizations have been delivering these benefits with respect, historically using reimbursable approaches. Then let's add another story to kind of firm up this picture, and this comes from behavioral sciences. If you put 5 presents in front of someone next to one present, and you say to them, "Do you want 5 presents or do you want 1 present?" What do you think they say? 5 presents every time, right?
Yep.
And then you start to unpack that, and you're like, well, why do you want 5 presents? Because is it because of the economic value or the perception of the value of 5 presents? And then what it actually comes down to is that humans have this kind of innate gratification moment, or this dopamine hit of unwrapping presents, and unwrapping 5 presents feels really, really special. And so if we bring that back into your first comment there, Bernard, which was around single pay package versus pay package plus salary, and you start talking about, well, a single pay package is just giving someone 1 present. There's a single moment of gratification, and also you're paid every single fortnight, weekly, monthly, whatever. But the concept of pay is that you're entitled to it, right? It's not something extra. The moment of gratification actually occurs when you get a pay increase and your next pay slip comes in. You're like, oh, great, I've got more money this week. But then after about 2 weeks, you forget that, and now that's the amount of money that you earn. When you look at auxiliary benefits, those things have the opportunity to deliver upon those extra gratifying moments. And you also have the ability as an employer to start talking and angling about what's important to you as a business. So you say, oh, we've got this benefit for health and well-being. we care about your health. We've got this benefit for public transport. Not only do we care about you coming into the office, but we care about a sustainable future. We've got this benefit that you can spend on going and doing things with your family because we care about your time and we want you to have work-life balance. So you can start to blend or promote those gratifying experiences, but then also blend in your employer brand and what you want your people to feel and experience and think that or feel what you believe in the way that you're delivering benefits out to your people.
You must have been doing quite a bit of research into this market, into the types of benefits that businesses are giving. And what have you found in terms of, interesting examples, but also the scale of it? Because, you want to know the size of your market.
Yeah, well, I think, the way that we look at our TAM, SAM is total accessible market, right, would be every single employee or person that works under an organization where the company wants to attract, recruit, and retain. When you start looking at individual line items of benefits, again, like the number of businesses that do it it's massive, and it's massive globally. In America, we sit in the market of what's called a lifestyle spending account, which is this really cool kind of system, which we haven't got on the side of the earth. And, me and you were talking off screen, Bernard, about whether anyone else in the world's doing this. And we do have a couple of other companies that we would be competitors to, currently one in the UK and one in the US, or a couple in the US that come to mind. But on this side of the earth, we're currently operating in some free space, and we're looking at, we just want to make the biggest impact we can and really solve this problem and make sure that employees or people, economic recipients, are receiving money in a way that's gratifying, in a way that they remember who gave them the money. We're really big on co-branding the cards that we provide to the people, the recipients of the money. We want our customers' brand on the cards. You probably would have seen the ASB HealthNow card. Thousands of people around New Zealand, ASB put a bunch of money on it. They gave their employees a really open scope of where it could be spent. The number of people that are posting about this, the funds that ASB's provided them, the things that they're doing with it, it's just amazing work that's really promoting ASB's employer brand around their Your Choice benefit offering.
Can you give us a sense of how it actually works? Because, I understand what a Visa or a MasterCard is, or a Prezi card, or maybe I'm given a gift of a warehouse card or a Bunnings warehouse card. How do your cards work?
Yeah, so we operate on the MasterCard rails, and what we do is when you tap our cards, we read all of the terminal identifying data that sits on payment terminals. So there's a bunch of different codes. Merchant category codes is one example. You have merchant identifier numbers, which is another example. And then there's a few other things. And then when a company chooses how they want to distribute or deliver funds to their people, they get to choose to either allow or decline or not allow specific merchant category codes or merchant identifiers. So then what that allows you to do, right, and we'll use doctors as the example, talking about what we used to do with health and wellbeing. The MCC code for doctors is 8011. Every single doctor that operates has that code somewhere on their terminal. If you're an organization and you want to be able to provide your people with access to the doctor, you turn on 8011 or you turn on doctors in our system. And then one of our cards will work at every single doctor from Kaitaia to Invercargill, from Perth to Brisbane, from New York to San Francisco, and so on and so forth, right? Then you bolster that out to be able to do that for many different things. The conversation we normally get to once that's understood is, well, I don't have the budget. And this is where it gets quite interesting for me. Is just a philosophical point, because you do have the budget. It's just that currently it's all going into salary. And as we've already discussed, when you put money into salary, it doesn't always hit the same. And so I've been talking about this, another story just to flesh this out. If someone's currently paid, $69,000 for sake of argument, and they get a pay bump at the end of the year from 69 to 74, $5,000. They're gonna the other scenario that you could play out is bump them from 69 to 73. The difference that they're going to see, you're not going to tell them this obviously, but the difference between the 74 and the 75 is about $30 after tax a week, right? It's nominal. But then if you grab that extra $1,000, which you were intending to pay them, you put it onto a co-branded card, and you say to them, I don't know, $250 for this, that, and the other, when they pull that card out, they're going to get the gratification moment of you giving them this extra benefit. They're going to have the perception when they tap that card that the transaction that they've just paid for is free because you've paid for it. It hasn't come out of their bank account. And overall, the employee experience is going to be much more gratifying, and they're going to have this reciprocity principle because having extra benefits, humans like to have lots of little moments of gratification often.
I wonder, though, in New Zealand, we've had quite strict rules on fringe benefits tax and also a very wide application of GST. So it's quite hard to avoid either GST when you're paying it, or if you're receiving a wage or a salary from an employer, that you know, it doesn't go through the existing PAY systems, and any sort of work-related benefit gets whacked with a fringe benefits tax, which seems to have stopped dead, you know, the practice or reduced dramatically the practice of, say, for example, giving people a work vehicle or paying for their internet at home or that sort of thing. So how do you deal, and how do employers and HR departments deal with these tax issues that have made these extraordinary payments more difficult in New Zealand than in other places and in the far distant past?
I think, and I mean, this is a great question and one we're asked often. Obviously, first and foremost, this is in no way tax advice, and I recommend that you get your own tax advice in every single instance. Make sure that my buddies at PwC are happy with me. What we tend to say, or what is true, right, is that in New Zealand there are different FBT rates for different salary rates, right? So there's this idea that there's a single rate, which is not true. If you complete a simple filing, that becomes true. And what's the rate, 61% or something to that effect. You have the ability in New Zealand to complete a complex FBT filing, and then that allows you to actually pay the FBT at a reflective rate, which is essentially, it's almost the same as what you'd pay if you were paying PAYE. In fact, it's actually slightly more economically efficient. I'll have to fact check this on the exact numbers, but let's say you're on a 24% tax rate. If you want to get $250 into someone's hand after tax, you pay their PAYE, you pay their mandatory 3% KiwiSaver. The amount you actually have to pay them is closer to $357, or very, very close to that from memory. If you want to pay through FBT, if it was an auxiliary benefit that fell under the FBT regime, then the amount of money that it's going to cost is closer to $343. It's just that you're grossing up, right? So there's this misconception that FBT is really expensive. It's not. You just complete a complex FBT filing. It's the same or similar to the PAYE rate, if not more economically efficient. The next part of the story is that for you to be able to complete that process, you need to be able to have all of the information you require to complete the filing, which means I give Bernard Hickey one of these cards loaded with company funds, which is only able to be spent on certain things that the company is approached. Bernard goes and spends the money. I need to be able to have Bernard Hickey spent this much money at this retailer on this specific date, and then I need to aggregate all of the money that Bernard spent into a single report, which you can then utilize to file your FBT. So that's another part of our solution, right? Or approach your tax, approach how you do your tax in the way that you would normally do it. We just provide you the data to do so and do that complex filing.
And does that, for the employee's point of view, does that make their lives any more difficult in terms of...
Well, they don't see it, right? As an employee, you don't see what your employer has to do with respect to FBT.
So looking at the potential technology issues here, or the ability to deal with, for example, counterfeiting and fraud. How do you deal with that and make sure that these things can't be misused, or that they can't go missing or be turned into tools for money laundering or whatever?
It's so funny that you mentioned this. I was on a flight down to Wellington yesterday to go and see a customer. I was reading through our AML documentation, 58 pages of glory. Great question. So, obviously, operating in the fintech space, there is a bunch of lines that you don't want to cross. And I think it's just about making sure that you put the right systems and processes in place, right? So with us, there's customer due diligence processes for all of our card holders. We've got the ability to block and cancel cards at both an end user level and an organization level. And there's a couple of other things, like we've got blacklisted transactional codes that we would never allow. So in our system, the things that are really, really important is that the money is the employer's money. The card holder is just a card holder transacting with the employer's money. The money is unable to be turned into cash or cash equivalents or any other cash transfer mechanism, so on and so forth. But yeah, definitely. If you're listening to this and you're wanting to go into the fintech space, I've been doing this for 3.5 years now, and that is a really, really big area of learning for me. And it's actually probably something that, rightly so, something that stops a lot of people from being able to get into the space, because it's no small investment from an economic perspective to set up a fintech business and to try and do some cool stuff in this space, let alone thinking around the right business models to actually make it all work from a unit economic perspective.
On that point, we hear a lot from politicians about red tape and the difficulties in starting businesses in New Zealand. Although when you look at New Zealand's record in the broad sweep of the world, we actually are quite high in the surveys for ease of doing business. What have you found starting a business where you have to think about these things and deal with regulators?
Yeah, I think in the fintech space, it's important, right? There's reasons why there are those protections in place because, if there weren't, there's the risk of things going wrong and you not being aware of them. So I wouldn't say that. I haven't personally found it to be challenging. I find that everyone in the New Zealand startup ecosystem is extremely helpful. Everyone seems to take this partnership approach, both actually in New Zealand and Australia. This is true. Everyone's pretty keen to partner and share knowledge, share experiences. And I've been extremely, extremely fortunate with the shareholders that I've been able to bring along on this journey across a number of different funding rounds, right? Like I've got the likes of Peter Hewlett with his background in PushPay. I've got Anna Mowbray from Zeal and his previously Zuru, and then a number of the leading VCs, Icehouse, NZVC, New Zealand Fintech Fund. New Zealand Fintech Fund being a prime example of some folks that have been able to be really supportive and communicating those bright lines and making sure that we're doing things in the appropriate way. And then again, get some good advisors and a board around you and make sure you do the right things, find a market where there's a significant problem, and then lock in and give it your all to try and solve that problem and continue listening to customers, right? And when you're wrong, or when things aren't quite landing, which, we've been through a couple of what I guess people would refer to as pivots, what I refer to as refocusing. When you're not quite on the right track, make sure that you're willing to let go of those things that aren't working and focus on the things that are, and then continue to test and iterate and focus on the things that are working.
Just thinking about it with my devil's advocate hat on, if I was an employee who, I just want the cash because I'm quite tight at the moment. I've got all these bills I need to pay, and I'd prefer to make my own decisions about where that goes. What sort of research are you seeing with employees about this issue of choice and options? Should an employer give the employee the option to take the cash or to have the benefit in a more directed way? What's the experience and the behavioural economics of it?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting point, right? I've never actually had anyone ask me in the way that you've just asked. I think broad strokes here, but as an employee, when you subscribe to be an employee and you go into an employer arrangement, there tends to be a list of things that you agree to, right? Like, there are instances where maybe a car park is included in your employment contract and the company gives you the option to receive that benefit in the form of cash. There are other situations where an organization doesn't do that because there's reasons. In lots of ways, there are always organizational reasons as to why they've implemented a benefit. The car park example, it's probably because they want you to come into work, they want you to work from the office, they want to remove the barrier of you coming into work. And so, hey, here's a car park, we want you to use this car park. I think when you look at our product, and again, going back to behavioral economics, people like to, what you've probably alluded to is like a bit of a rational first approach. And innately
this is what us economists do. We always assume that everyone's irrational. Everyone's rational rather than irrational.
But humans aren't rational, right? Like that's the thing. And it's when you say to someone, hey, I want to give you, well, first let's get this like point around salary, right? So I say to you, Bernard, hey, do you want $500 on this card? You get $500. I say to you, hey, I'm going to give you $500 into your salary. And then suddenly you're paying PAYE, you might pay student loan, you might pay KiwiSaver on it, you get $300 in the hand. That's not a fun experience. Whereas you get $500 on a card and you're like, I've never had this before. No employer's ever given me this card. No employer's ever told me that they care about my well-being in a meaningful way and have done something about it. I think also, just to go away purely from the well-being line, what lots of companies are now doing is they're making the choices really, really open to give those individual employees the experience, the choice and autonomy to choose where they spend money within different buckets. Because deliver certain amounts of money to deliver organizational outcomes, health and wellbeing plan, reduce absenteeism, reduce lost time to injury. Recreational plan or reward plan or $250 on your birthday, that's purely because they want you to have a moment of being like, man, my employer is really awesome and they care about me.
Another really interesting issue with payment cards that Consumer NZ is highlighted, with gift cards in particular. I'm forever, well, I wish I'd get some really big gift cards, but I've had the occasional gift card at Christmas, and I take it out of the envelope and go, gee, thanks for the warehouse card. I'm off to buy myself a drill, and then I misplace the card or I forget. And then 3 years later, I discover it under the couch, and I look at it, and it's expired. How do you avoid this issue of, I've instead of the salary, which I knew I was going to get, and I'm definitely going to get it, there's a risk of either expiries or, accidental non-uses where the benefit goes to the employer?
Yeah, so first and foremost, right, if we just set one comment straight, is that with gift cards, the benefit does not go to the employer. Breakage on gift cards is kept by the company of the gift card, right? So you give someone insert business gift card, that money expires if they had $100 on it and a company paid $100 to get the $100 on it plus the load fee. If that card then goes under the couch for 3 years and expires, the gift card company keeps the $100. Our product does not operate like that. For us, whatever money is not spent is not charged. So in that instance, I guess what you're saying is technically right, that the employer would benefit from a lack of utilization. But that being said, like if I look at our current data, and it wasn't specifically for this call, but I got our CTO the other day to pull a bunch of data for me. Our utilization rates are north of 86% for people that have had the card for less than 6 months. The money is spent, and the money is spent in the ways that it's intended to be spent.
And how big could this product be? Because, there's a bunch of people in government, for example, who would love to see a card like this used to deliver benefits to beneficiaries.
Bang on. You're bang on.
So, and we're talking billions of dollars that is spent there. The government, of course, is a long way from making decisions about that, but has talked about it. So, is that something that a card like this could be used, or something you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, short answer is yes, we are actually looking at that specific government use case. We don't have a line into government yet on that specific topic, but let me frame this up. Or go back a few steps to like first principles. What our solution is the ability for an economic distributor in all of its different forms to move money to an intended economic recipient with a set of rules between those two individuals and the governance to control how that money is spent to achieve certain outcomes that the economic recipient wants to achieve, while also providing a level of freedom, autonomy, and certainty to the economic recipient and the card holder because you've displayed the amount of money where they can spend it, so on and so forth. When you have that kind of first principles lens, then you go, hang on a second, insurance companies are economic distributors and currently they do pay and claim. Iwi groups are economic distributors with koha across a number of grants across a number of different reasons, and they would like to have governance around how that money's spent, and they're currently doing some reimbursement approaches in many instances. Governments, to your point, there was that thing that came out, I can't remember the exact month, but they were talking about, I think it was 50% of the beneficiary grant or beneficiary payment, that they wanted to be able to control with respect to what it could be spent on within supermarkets. And so, we are actively looking at all of these different use cases, and we actually already have conversations taking place across the insurance space with a couple of large insurers in New Zealand and a few iwis across the motu, the country, to try and support that delivery. And with that piece around, what's the next evolution within the controllable payment card space, it really starts to get a bit more complicated because you need, you start to need this thing called SKU data or product level data. So what's actually, if you think about the supermarket example, right? It's really, really hard, or currently it's not currently possible through the payment terminal to get what the person's put through the till. I don't know whether they're buying bread or fruit or vegetables right now. When you tap a payment card, it doesn't come through to me in the payload. But if you could get to the point where, maybe there was like an argument that in the future we start providing digital receipts through to banks or through to card issuers like us, through to people that provision cards like us. And if you're able to provide digital receipts that contain all of that data, then you could start doing controls at another level, right? Which provides the economic distributors with more certainty over where the money's going and make sure that the dollar goes a bunch further at the economic recipient level.
Mm. And just finally, dumb question, whenever I talk to a new business startup or an organization with great aspirations, how do you make money?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a dumb question, right? So we're not a charity. I do like to refer to us as a socially capitalistic business. I think that those businesses are the ones that do the best in this world, where you're able to both do good, do something really amazing, but also have a positive impact on people that are receiving the product. And in our case, obviously, it's about improving the number or increasing the number of organizations that are delivering benefits and what those benefits then end up delivering with respect to the utilization in specific areas, whether it be, again, well-being, sustainability, culture, so on and so forth, driving profitability within an organization. But the way we make money is on a per card basis, just like, frankly, it's kind of similar to the way banks make money, right? With an account fee. We're not a bank. We have no intention of being a bank, but we do charge on a per account basis a really reasonable amount, because for us, it's really about scale. It's about winning New Zealand. It's about going into Australia or already in Australia, but doing more in Australia with bigger businesses. It's about connecting with really large enterprise customers that have large, diverse, distributed teams, complicated reimbursement cycles. Just to give another story really quickly, I met with an Australian business recently who has a regulatory requirement for all of the truck drivers in their business to complete annual medical checks. A portion of those truck drivers would do it on a reimbursable basis. It took them between 6 and 12 weeks to get the money back to these truck drivers after they'd paid for it. And, with a platform like ours, you can turn reimbursements from many weeks and many steps into 1.5 seconds at a terminal. The opportunity is large.
Mm. And you mentioned that you use the MasterCard rails. One of the criticisms of the move towards PayPass and the PayWave type technologies is that it's inserted a layer of cost into the entire transaction chain.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that MasterCard doesn't get its share of those things as well, or at least a big share?
I mean, I hear you in many respects, right? And I used to have a brick and mortar business, so I appreciate merchant fees. I think my kind of general comments would be that there are many players within the movement of money. So when we moved from cash to digital or card-based payments, right, digital movement of funds, lots of things became really easier for organizations. The first thing is that you didn't have the money risk behind the till. Money couldn't go missing. You didn't have the need to obviously go and take that money and deposit it physically wherever it needed to be deposited. And then also, there wasn't, we're not a credit solution in any way, shape or form and don't have any intention to be, but there wasn't the ability to easily provide credit to increase the purchasing power of people that had money. It doesn't have a credit function. So then you got to digital payments, right? And you have payment service providers, you've got acquirers, you've got payment rails, Visa, MasterCard, Discovery, those types of folks. And all of them play a really specific and important role in moving money in like a credible way from the card in front of you and through to the acquiring bank or your bank account. There's a lot, as I already alluded to, there's a lot of problems that they solve for, and rightfully so, they should be able to charge money for it. I think that, the idea of regulators looking at it to control costs, that's obviously important. But I think in many respects, you'll find that, businesses like MasterCard and others, they're not charging exorbitant amounts per actual transaction. It's just that there's a lot of players within the journey. And I mean, what's the average interchange, right? Like 2% when you actually get down to an aggregate rate. But you are right in saying that it does, in New Zealand anyway, it has led to the passing on of those fees to the consumer. But a way to avoid that, right, is to plug your card in and put the PIN in rather than PayWave. I actually don't personally use PayWave very often for that specific reason. Maybe I've got a little bit of an economist bone in my body too. But when you're thinking about how much money you pay on your card within a 12-month period and what those 2% fees add up to, there's ways to reduce and minimize your fee experience.
Steven Zinsli, the founder of Extraordinary, formerly HealthNow. Thank you so much for coming in to When the Facts Change with the Spin-Off Podcast Network.
Thanks, Bernard. Such a great conversation, mate. Thanks heaps.
When the Facts Change was brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network, together with KiwiBank. Visit kiwibank.co.nz to find out how KiwiBank are making Kiwi better off.
Does your brand have something important to say through meaningful messaging that reaches the right audience? At The Spin-Off, we work closely with our partners to create bespoke campaigns that bring value to both your brand and our audience. If you're interested in learning more about partnering with us, email Beck, that's BEC, at thespinoff.co.nz. 17 years ago, Sarah Sheriff sat in a Whistler cafe on a mission to spot just one icebreaker jacket in the crowd. Today, they're everywhere. But for New Zealand brands like Icebreaker, Whitakers and Fix and Fog, going global took more than just great innovation and good luck. The right market can mean success. The wrong one can waste time, money and momentum. Right now on The Spin-Off, Joel McManus looks at what it takes to get it right and how New Zealand Trade and Enterprise can help your brand reach the world. Read the full story at thespinoff.co.nz/export.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.